I was sitting in my home office when I heard the front door slam. Jessica's voice called out, bright with that familiar motherly excitement. "He's here." Before I could respond, Phil stormed into the room without knocking. As usual, he was wearing a tailored suit that looked too expensive for someone who'd never earned a dollar of his own. In his hands, he held his college diploma like it was a royal decree. "All right," he said, standing tall, chin slightly raised. "I'm ready to take over the business." There was no question in his voice, no hesitation, just cold expectation. I looked at him for a long moment. Jessica stepped in behind him, wringing her hands, eyes darting between us like she was watching two wild animals in the same cage. "Phil," I began calmly. "What do you mean? Take over?" He let out a small laugh, a scoff, "Really? Isn't it obvious? You promised. Mom told me. You said the business would be mine once I finished college. Well, here I am." I turned my eyes to Jessica. She froze. I had spent the last 30 years of my life building my company. It wasn't just a business. It was blood, sacrifice, lost sleep, and quiet victories no one ever noticed. And now this boy, my stepson, stood in front of me with a shiny piece of paper and the gall to think he had earned it. "Phil, the company isn't something you just inherit," I said evenly. "It's not a car or a house. It's a living thing. It breathes through the people who run it, who understand it, who've grown with it. You haven't spent a single day inside its walls." His face darkened. "That's not what Mom said." Jessica stepped forward, her voice shaky. "He's right, in a way. I did tell him that. I just wanted to motivate him. I didn't think," she stopped. Her eyes were wet. "I didn't think it would go this far." I felt a slow, cold anger rise in my chest. "You told him he'd get the business?" She nodded, ashamed. Phil jumped back in. "You think I spent 4 years studying finance for nothing? I've been preparing for this. I know what I'm doing." "You don't," I said, my voice harder now. "You think a diploma makes you a leader? You haven't led anything. You're just trying to back out," he snapped. "You're scared to let go, scared I'll do better than you ever did." The insult hit deeper than I expected. Not because I believed him, but because he believed himself. Jessica stepped between us, her voice trembling. "Please, don't fight. This wasn't how I wanted this to happen." I sat down slowly, rubbing my temples. I wasn't angry at her. Not entirely. She had always wanted Phil to feel like he belonged, to feel secure. But this? "You both betrayed me," I said quietly. "You." I looked at Jessica. "For making promises that weren't yours to make. And you," I turned to Phil, "for thinking you're owed something just because it was convenient for you." The room fell into heavy silence. "I'm not giving you the company," I said at last. "Not like this." Phil clenched his jaw. "You'll regret this." Jessica gasped, placing a hand on his arm. "Phil, don't." But I held up a hand. "Let him speak. He's not a child anymore. That's what this is about, isn't it? Him becoming a man." Phil's glare could have burned through stone. But behind the fire, I saw something else, fear. A man who had built his future on a lie. A boy who thought the summit was waiting for him, only to realize the climb hadn't even begun. The next few days passed in a thick fog of silence. Jessica barely spoke to me, except for necessary words exchanged over cold dinners. Phil locked himself in the guest suite upstairs, coming out only late at night when the house was quiet. The tension in the air was unbearable, like a storm cloud hanging just above our heads, refusing to break. I kept going to work. Meetings, calls, planning for the next quarter. But my mind was elsewhere. On that look in Phil's eyes, that sense of entitlement, the echo of his words, "You'll regret this." It was the 5th evening when Jessica finally cracked. I came home late, as usual. She was waiting for me in the kitchen, sitting at the table in her robe, a glass of untouched wine in front of her. "You're killing him," she said softly. I set my briefcase down and leaned against the counter. "He'll live." "You don't understand," she said, her voice trembling. His entire world just collapsed. I know I shouldn't have promised him the business, but I panicked. I thought it would give him a reason to finish college, to stay focused. And what? You thought I'd just hand it all over? "I didn't think that far," she admitted, tears in her eyes. I wanted him to grow up. And now he thinks you lied. That I lied. He's broken, and he's angry, and I can't fix it." I looked away, jaw tight. "He's not broken," I said. "He's just never had to work for anything." Jessica reached across the table and grabbed my hand. Please, please don't let this tear us apart. There has to be a way. Something you can offer him. A chance. I was tired. Not just from the day, but from everything. Tired of the years of trying to reach Phil. Tired of trying to be something he never seemed to want. A father. But I wasn't heartless. So I sat down, took a long breath, and I made a decision. All right, I said quietly. I'll give him a chance. But not a title. Not an office with his name on the door. Not a silver spoon. Jessica blinked, hopeful. What do you mean? I waited until Phil came downstairs the next morning. He looked like he hadn't slept, but still carried that same arrogant posture, shoulders back, chin up, false confidence wrapped in resentment. Sit down, I told him. He did, reluctantly. I'm not giving you my company, I said firmly, but I'm giving you something better. A chance to earn it. He scoffed. What is this, a game? No, it's real life, I said. Starting next week, you'll work for me, but not in a corner office. Not as some executive trainee. You'll start at the bottom. Warehouse. Shipping. Customer service. Whatever needs doing, you'll do it. Phil's mouth opened in disbelief. You'll report to supervisors like everyone else. You'll follow the same rules. No special treatment. I'll be your mentor, not your boss. You'll prove yourself from the ground up. 1 year. That's what I'm offering. And if I refuse, he snapped. Then this conversation is over, I said flatly. And so is your future in this company. He looked at Jessica, who only nodded with pleading eyes. This is insane, he muttered. You want me to be a grunt? With a degree? I want you to understand what it means to lead. You can't run a company if you've never stood where the workers stand. His pride flared. This is just your way of punishing me. No, I said, meeting his gaze. This is me giving you the one thing no one else ever did. A real chance to become a man. Silence. Phil stood, his fists clenched at his sides. Fine. You want me to dig through boxes and clean floors? I'll do it. But don't think for a second that I'll forget how you humiliated me. I didn't respond. He turned and stormed off. Upstairs, a door slammed. Jessica closed her eyes, exhaling shakily. That could have gone worse. I picked up my coffee. It will. Monday arrived like a silent judgment. Phil showed up at the office in a designer shirt and overpriced shoes, clearly expecting some leniency despite our conversation. His expression was carved from stone, proud, but not proud of where he was. More like he was trying to survive the embarrassment. He didn't come to me. He didn't have to. I'd already instructed HR. His name was on the employee list, just another name among dozens. His title, Junior Logistics Assistant. He reported directly to Daniel, one of the warehouse supervisors. Daniel was a tough man, former Marine, built like a freight truck, and allergic to entitlement. He didn't know who Phil was, not really. I'd only told him one thing. He's new. Treat him like you'd treat anyone else. Phil walked through the warehouse doors at 7:59 a.m., 1 minute before shift. The other employees barely glanced at him as he stood awkwardly by the locker room. I watched from the upper floor window, sipping my coffee, arms crossed. Daniel greeted him with a grunt. You Phil? He nodded. Daniel handed him a clipboard. Good. You're in zone 3. Inventory check. Gloves are in the cabinet. If I see you checking your phone, I'm tossing it in the compactor. Phil stared at the clipboard like it was written in another language. By lunch, I had already received 2 updates from Daniel. He asked when the real job starts. Tried to take a break 20 minutes in. Called another worker slow. She nearly decked him. Typical. I knew this wouldn't be easy, for him or for me. But it had to be done. Every single employee in my company had earned their place. And if Phil ever wanted to lead them, he'd have to understand them, respect them, earn their respect. That couldn't be bought with a diploma. At 5:08 p.m., Phil dragged himself into my office, covered in dust and sweat, his perfect image ruined. His pride along with it. This is a joke, he said, not bothering to sit. I looked up from my desk. How was your first day? He dropped the clipboard on my desk. I wasn't trained. I wasn't shown where anything was. I was ignored all day. I leaned back in my chair. You were treated like everyone else. Welcome to the bottom. This isn't how you lead people, he snapped. You don't throw them into chaos and hope they survive. You're not leading, I said sharply. You're learning. His nostrils flared. Learning what? That people are rude? That the system is broken? No, I said. Learning what it means to be part of something bigger than yourself. Learning humility, accountability, Teamwork. Phil laughed bitterly. Spare me the life lessons. I'm not here to coddle you, Phil, I said, my voice lowering. You think I built this company by reading a few books and getting a shiny degree? I built it because I knew how every part of it worked. From the inside out. I've cleaned toilets. I've lifted boxes. I've stayed up until 3 a.m. fixing payroll errors. That's not the world we live in anymore. No, I said. That's the world I built. And if you want a place in it, you'll earn it. He stared at me, and for the first time, really stared. Like he was beginning to see me not as the man who married his mother, not as the old guy who paid the bills, but as someone who had lived every inch of the life he thought he could skip. Phil turned to leave. Same time tomorrow, I said. He paused. I don't need this. I could walk out right now. You could, I agreed. But if you do, don't come back. He didn't answer, just walked out, slamming the door behind him. I sat back in my chair, tired. Not because of the fight, because of what it all meant. This was just the beginning of something hard, something uncertain, and yet, maybe, something necessary. The second week was worse than the first. Phil showed up every day, but his posture said it all. Head down, movements sluggish, every task met with a sigh or a muttered complaint. He didn't talk to the others unless he had to, and they didn't go out of their way to talk to him either. Workers can smell arrogance the way wolves smell blood. Daniel didn't complain, but he didn't need to. I saw the reports. I watched the security footage. I listened when the floor staff came to me with just a heads up. Your guy left 15 pallets mislabeled. He rolled his eyes when I corrected him. Keeps talking about fixing the system, but doesn't even know how it works. Still, I didn't intervene. Not directly. That would have defeated the whole purpose. Jessica, on the other hand, had no such restraint. He's miserable, she told me one night, her voice on edge. I've never seen him like this. He doesn't sleep. He eats cereal at midnight like he's 12 again. He's lost. I stayed silent. She leaned across the couch toward me. You're pushing him too hard. No, I said, setting my glass down. The world is. She frowned. He needs support, not judgment. He's getting support, I replied. It just doesn't look like hand-holding. Jessica looked at me like I was someone she didn't recognize. Do you even like him? That question hit harder than I expected. After a long pause, I said, I want him to grow up. That's the closest thing to love I can give right now. She turned away, arms crossed, tears in her eyes. You say that, but he doesn't see it. All he sees is a wall he can't climb. I didn't respond, because she was right, at least in part. A few days later, I called Phil into my office for a check-in. He walked in looking half dead, shirt untucked, fingers bruised from misloading crates. Sit, I said. He didn't. Why am I really here, he asked. You tell me. He finally slumped into the chair across from my desk, his legs stretched out, arms folded like a sulking teenager. I get it, he muttered. I'm supposed to suffer. Be humbled. Earn my stripes. This isn't a punishment, I said. It's preparation. For what? A job I'll never get? You want the title, the desk, the power, but you've shown none of the qualities of a leader. I'm not a robot, he snapped. I think differently. I innovate. I ask questions. You people treat me like a problem because I'm not like the rest of you. No, I said, sharper now. We treat you like a problem because you refuse to learn. You walk in every day thinking you're above the work. That's why no one respects you. He stood abruptly. I've done everything you asked. I've shown up. I've worked. And you're still just waiting for me to fail. I stood too. I'm waiting for you to stop pretending the world owes you anything, I said. I'm waiting for the man behind the attitude to show up. Phil's eyes burned with frustration. Maybe he's not coming. Then you won't last the year. He stared at me, not just with anger, but desperation. This wasn't supposed to be like this, he muttered. I know, I said quietly. It was supposed to be easy. But easy doesn't build anything worth having. That night, I found Jessica sitting alone in the backyard, wrapped in a blanket, staring at nothing. I sat beside her without speaking. After a long pause, she asked, Do you ever regret it? Us, taking him in? No, I said. I regret not being harder on him sooner. She nodded slowly. I just wanted him to have a father. And I wanted him to have a future, I said. Silence again. We still want the same thing, she whispered. I looked at the stars above us. Cold, distant, eternal. Yes, I said. We just disagree on the path. 3 weeks in, something changed. Phil stopped complaining. He He still dragged himself into work every morning looking like he hadn't slept, but the defiance had dulled. The eye rolls disappeared. He started showing up a few minutes early. He began asking questions, not about how to get promoted, but about how things worked. Why the loading system was done a certain way. Why inventory sometimes lagged behind real-time reports. Daniel told me about it over coffee in the break room. He's not good at it, Daniel said bluntly, but at least he's trying. Stopped whining. That's something. I didn't smile, but I allowed myself the smallest breath of relief. Jessica, too, noticed the shift. One evening, she said, he didn't slam the door tonight. He just went upstairs. Quiet. Maybe he's learning the value of silence, I said. She gave me a tired smile. Or maybe he's just exhausted. Maybe both. Then came the warehouse incident. I was in a budget meeting when I got the call. Phil's been hurt. Minor injury, but we had to send him to urgent care. He insisted you not come. I left the meeting anyway. By the time I reached the clinic, he was already in the waiting room, a butterfly bandage across his brow and a clipboard in hand. He was filling out the release forms. What happened? I asked, standing in front of him. He didn't look up. Steel rack slipped when I was lifting a panel. My fault. I moved too fast. Didn't check the lock. Why didn't you call me? I figured I'd already disappointed you enough. There it was again, the crack in the armor. Beneath the sarcasm and entitlement, a very different Phil was trying to emerge. Bruised, but maybe finally aware that he was flesh and blood, not ego and illusion. You're not here to impress me, I said, sitting beside him. I thought that was the point. No, I said. You're here to figure out if this life is something you're even capable of living. He finally turned to look at me. You still don't think I am? I don't know yet. That's what this year is for. Phil didn't answer. After a while, I asked, have you learned anything? He let out a bitter chuckle. Yeah, people aren't as stupid as I thought. The guy who trained me in logistics has no degree, but he knows more about systems than anyone I met in college. That's why he's still here. Why didn't you start me there? He asked. In logistics? Because you needed to understand the foundation first. If you don't respect the people under you, you'll never be worth leading. Phil looked at the floor. You think I'm soft? No, I said. I think you've never been tested. He nodded slowly, then stood. I'll be at work tomorrow. You should take a day off. No, he said. I need to show my face. It was my mistake. And with that, he walked out. That night, Jessica curled up beside me in bed and asked, what happened? He bled a little, I said, but I think the fall might have knocked some sense into him. She smiled sadly. You think he'll make it? I think he's finally seeing the man he could be, not the boy he wants to remain. She placed her head on my chest. I just want us to survive this. The three of us. I didn't say it aloud, but I wanted the same. More than anything. Even if it meant breaking him down to build him up again. Even if it meant breaking a part of myself in the process. The year didn't pass quickly. There were no grand turning points. No movie-style scenes of breakthrough or bonding. No hugs. No sudden understanding. Just small things. Subtle shifts. And silence. The kind that used to feel like distance but started to feel like space. Room. For growth. Phil never became the golden employee. But he did become something else. Consistent. He showed up. He asked better questions. He took responsibility for his mistakes. He didn't try to lead, but he learned to follow. And that, I realized, was the first step to any real leadership. The warehouse workers, who once rolled their eyes at him, began giving him nods of recognition. Not friendship, not yet, but respect. Earned, not gifted. I still remember the day he came into my office, not unannounced this time. He knocked. It was late. The sun had just started setting behind the downtown skyline. I looked up from the quarterly report and saw him standing there, cleaner now, sharper. Not wearing a suit, just company coveralls and tired eyes. He stood silently for a moment before saying, I'd like to talk. Of course. He closed the door behind him and sat across from me. For once, not slouching, not folding his arms like a shield. I've been thinking, he said, about everything. This year. The job. You. I waited. I used to think you were just some cold, obsessed businessman who didn't know how to connect with people. That you were trying to keep me down. And now, he sighed. Now I think you were trying to make sure I didn't collapse under the weight of something I wasn't ready for. I didn't reply. I wanted him to keep going. I resented you for years, he continued. Not because of what you did, but because you reminded me of everything I wasn't. You built something from scratch, and I just thought I could take it. Like I was owed. And now? I asked again. He smiled faintly. Now I realized the only thing I was ever owed was a chance. And you gave me that, even when I didn't deserve it. I leaned back in my chair, a strange tightness in my chest I hadn't felt in years. I didn't do it to be kind, Phil, I said. I did it because you needed the truth, and no one else was willing to give it to you. I know, he nodded. And I hated you for it. But now, he looked away for a moment, then back at me. I'm not ready to run your company. I'm not sure I ever will be. But I want to earn my place. Not as your son, not as your successor, just as me. That was the moment I saw him. Not the boy I had been trying to correct, but the man I had hoped would emerge. I stood, walked to the window, and looked out over the city. You know, I said, when I started this company, I used to stand right here and wonder if anyone would ever see it the way I saw it. Phil joined me at the window. Maybe you will, I said. Maybe not. But if you keep showing up like you have been, not pretending, not demanding, just doing the work, then maybe one day you won't have to ask for a place. You'll already belong. We stood there in silence for a while, two silhouettes in the fading light. Not friends, not father and son, but something closer than we had ever been before. Equals. Still fractured. Still rebuilding. But trying. Phil turned to me. So what now? I glanced at him. Now, I said with a small smile. Now you go back to work. He smirked. Of course. And just before he stepped out, he looked over his shoulder and said, Thank you. For the window. And for the wall I had to climb to get here. Then he left. And for the first time in a very long time, I didn't feel alone in the company I had built. I felt hopeful.